think the thing that really started to focus my message is what I began to discover about my own life. And I see it in a lot of other people's lives. In fact, I'm going to make a very generalized statement. Some people don't like that, but it's just my observation. Most people do not lead their lives. They just simply accept them. When I came to terms with that for me, that helped me to clarify the message that I want to communicate with others, is that you don't have to just simply accept whatever happens. You have the ability to focus on what really stirs your heart and to begin to intentionally map out some steps that you can take to lead the life that you want to lead. I didn't want to be a speaker. I grew up the son of a preacher, and I loved what my dad did. I was influenced by that. I found it fascinating that a person could get in front of a group of people and communicate in a way that would cause them to think deeply about their lives and change. I appreciated that, but speaking isn't the only thing that goes with being preachers. And there was a lot of other things that I thought, I'm not sure that I want to do that. So I really started my career trying to avoid being a speaker. But giving presentations and speaking came with the territory. And so I did it and discovered the first few times that it was kind of fun.
I think the greatest tragedy is not that the ride comes to an end, but that for many of us, it keeps coming back to the same place we started. And nothing has really changed. And then worse, we do it all over again. That's why we keep asking, what's the one thing that separates those who live their dreams from those who dream of living?
I fell in love with the speaking. And it wasn't the speaking, it wasn't the entertaining, it wasn't being the person who was up front. It was the look in people's eyes, the interaction that I began to sense with people who were in the audience. And that to me was the sweet spot. And for me, the thing that I found that I was good at and that was the enjoyable part of speaking was stories. It was just simply telling stories and taking ideas and concepts that we wanted to teach, but knowing that just teaching the content alone wasn't really going to be memorable and maybe not very moving. But by putting those truths into a story that people could relate to, then they're listening. When I started doing the program on conflict management, I hated the term conflict management. And anytime I did a conflict management program or breakout session, usually the people who came to the conflict management class were the people who were the cause of the conflict. And the content was good, but it was just boring to me. And so I started telling the story about the porcupine races in Idaho.
On your mark, get set, race!
And suddenly people are laughing, and they're coming up to me afterwards and they're saying, I've got a prickly person in my life too. And it's like, I'm telling a story about porcupine races and the strategy of helping, a strategy of achieving a goal when you have somebody on your team that's difficult to work with. That's all it was just a story to teach a concept or ideas. And people related to porcupines. And that's when the idea of the book came to be. It's like, okay, so chasing porcupines, how do we work with prickly people? One of the things I wanted to avoid as I started developing my speaking career was I wanted to avoid being known as the porcupine guy. Because that's what people started, oh, you're the guy that does the porcupines. The message I wanted to convey was much bigger than just porcupines or dealing with difficult situations. It was about leadership and choices and lifestyle and attitude and having some intention and purpose of life. And somebody told me one day, it's okay to be known for a particular story. If the story is what opens the door for the receptivity of people's interest in other things that you can help them with, then let that story be the connection point. Family and faith are huge for me. Obviously being the son of a preacher, faith is part of the equation. Usually when people hear things like, oh, he's the son of a preacher, they go, is he okay? I think I turned out okay. My mom and dad said I turned out okay, so I'm going to go with that. My mom and dad always encouraged us to pursue our dreams. Never said this is what you have to do. Encouraged our talents as they saw them. And I'm grateful for that. But the family was huge. My grandparents had a huge influence on my life. My father's father was Icelandic, a fisherman. Moved to the United States with his brothers and sisters, became a tugboat engineer. They are all seafaring people, probably because they're Vikings, but farming was not an option. My mother's father was a Navy man, a long career in the Navy, and I looked up to both of those men deeply. My mother's dad had a tremendous influence on me. I really respected him, and he was a man of faith, very quiet faith. A lot of guys, especially those that went through World War II, pretty quiet about the way they lived their lives. And I think that shaped a lot of my work ethic and my thought processes. There's a job to do and you do it. You don't do it for the medal, you don't do it for the credit, you do it because it needs to be done. That's why some days, I'm up early and schlepping my way to the airport and through the security and getting on little tiny prop planes to get to little places, and then getting up and working hard in all kinds of circumstances. But you're there to do the job. I was on a plane one night flying from Dallas to Memphis, sitting next to a guy who was the CEO of a big accounting firm. He looked at me and, the proverbial, what do you do for a living? And I didn't want to say I'm a motivational speaker, because usually people, when you hear the words, I'm a motivational speaker, they think of a Saturday Night Live skit and the guy who lives in a van down by the river. So I was trying to avoid telling him what I did for a living, and then he looked at me and he said, so you're a professional speaker? I said, yeah. And he goes, so really you're a motivational speaker? Yeah, I am. And then he asked me a question I've never been asked. He said, so what motivates a motivational speaker? And the only thing that came to my mind was that moment when you're speaking, that you can see in somebody's eyes the aha, and they get it. And I have people tell me a lot, especially when we do corporate events, we're doing training for companies. I have people who come and tell me, the things I learned today about how I can interact with my coworkers and things that I can do to improve my own professional development, they're all things that make sense to my personal life, to my family life, how I'm going to interact with. And that to me is the answer to why I do what I do.